Okay, guys, welcome to another series of Education Roundtable. So, tonight we're going to have a huge discussion ripped from the headlines, of course. But you guys know it's really hard for me to pull a show off without my co host. What's going on, Shannon from New York?
Hey, Burkett, how you doing?
Dude, I'm doing so great. Like, this has like been a hot week for me, and it's like midweek. I speak at a
Okay.
conference tomorrow in Chicago, so I'm pretty hyped up. As soon as we're done here, I'm jumping on the road so I can go talk at that conference. It's about, of course, post-secondary education, and
Okay.
so I'm going to go through a whole series on teaching and technology.
So you're
Um,
presenting at this conference.
I'm presenting at this conference. I'm pretty excited about it. Yeah. So I got to hit the road as soon as we're finished with the podcast so I can go do my, as they say, my dance, my little
Yeah.
1, 2. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm really excited about tonight. And we have two amazing guests. So I'm going to bring them on. So you know what, Dr. Chastity, you're a returning guest. I'm feeling like you're like a co-host, because like you've been on like twice. And I'm really excited. So like, doing Rip from the headlines, what are your thoughts on what we've been doing with Rip from the Headlines? Has it given you more insight on what's happening globally in education?
Absolutely. I think it has. And I have to be honest, last week was kind of heavy for me. Like I had to take some time and process after last week. But yes,
Yes.
it's definitely given me headsight in a broader perspective, different ways of knowing. Um, and not just looking from my silo, Michigan, America, Michigan, right?
I'm gonna say, don't worry, Shannon. When we switched over our format and we did our first show, I had to take a screenshot of Shannon. He was doing this the whole time, like, oh my god, what is happening? So trust me, we started out with some pretty racy things. It was students being sold online, on an online slave trade by the white students, and it was kind of like an assignment, and it was just kind of like, is this really happening? But it's happening, and it's unreal. Now, my next guest tonight, I'm going to tell you, I love Ken. I call him Mac. I don't call him Ken. I call him Mac. Mac is one of these guys who just loves education. He has given everything he's had ever since he used to be in the NBA. He had car dealerships, but the whole time Mac had such a passion for and love for education, and he's still in the game. So Mac, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, listen, thank you. I'm very humbled. I didn't know Shannon was in New York. I was at, I don't want to call the principal name, at Frank Sinatra School in Queens. You know, New York was on break all last week.
Yep.
And a good friend of mine, but you talk about this equity piece, and it was kind of crazy. Someone sent me something saying that until we get this family situation together, what we're doing is nice, but it's like I've been hearing, I've heard No Child Left Behind. I've heard before No Child Left Behind. What was Dr. Crosby doing? But here's the deal: it's going to take people like us to solve our problem. Whether you're in Detroit, whether you're in Harlem, they're doing some dynamic things in Harlem at Frederick Douglass Academy right there on 125th. But it gets back to, I was at an impromptu conference with some people from a Simeon Baptist church. This education thing have to start at home. Until we really, 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 whether you go to Chicago or Detroit in your silo, we got to get the parents not just involved in the bake sale, involved in education. And, that's the key. Because look what happened in Oak Park yesterday. I don't know if you saw what happened in Oak Park, Michigan.
Ken, you can't say what happened to Oak Park because that's our next week's Rip from the Headline. You can't give it away.
Okay, I don't want to give it. But people in Oak Park at the leadership, her husband is a personal friend of mine. And grown men are coming to the school fighting kids. How do you counter that?
Okay, well, Ken, you just gave it away. So, Ken, to your point, a lot of what we're covering tonight in Rip from the Headlines is about that perspective. We're going to look at 5 different videos from conversations from around the world. And so I want to get us started here tonight, and then we're all going to chime in and we're going to talk about what's happening in education globally. These are not just things that are happening in Michigan or New York or DC. It's all around the world. So let's get started. So one of the things we're going to look at tonight is that with the transition back into the school districts from the pandemic, whether or not we're really providing our students, our parents, and our teachers with the social emotional skills and support that they need. So from the actions that you see tonight, you determine whether or not we're really doing that. You be the judge of whether or not we're providing the support that everyone needs. It's not about just the students, it's about the teachers, it's about the parents, it's about the community. Just think about it. A lot of students have been out of school for 2 years and now they're back in play. And in the transition, when you start looking at with social media and real world, now they're at a conflict and a lot of students are being compromised because of that. So our video lineup tonight will be, our first video is going to be relevant to who is really teaching. Our second video is anger management. Our third video is relevant to teaching social media. And our fourth video is substitute teachers. And our fifth video is you're not just teaching. And we're always going to end our episode on celebrating excellence in the classroom. So let's get started.
And the Natomas Unified School District plans to fire an Inderkum High School teacher who was filmed while speaking about Antifa and his plans for his students to become revolutionaries. It is a story that is getting a lot of attention. And ABC 10's Barbara Bingley has the details.
Shame on you, and you should not be teaching.
Dozens of Natomas Unified parents are voicing outrage over allegations that an AP history teacher attempted to indoctrinate students with Antifa ideals at Inderkum High School. The left-wing movement against racism and fascism is known for using both nonviolent and violent militaristic tactics.
Everybody in Sacramento is not okay with this. We don't want this in any district.
I have 180 days to turn them into revolutionaries. How do you do that? How do you get it?
The concern comes after this video surfaced online, filmed by the far-right activist group Project Veritas, which claims to investigate and expose corruption, often by filming people when they're unaware.
This is just too much.
Natomas Unified School Superintendent Chris Evans wrote in a letter to parents Wednesday saying a teacher at Inderkum High School was recorded sharing his educational approach that is disturbing and undermines the public's trust. Natomas Unified will be taking the legally required next steps to place the teacher on unpaid leave and fire the teacher, after the district's own investigation found the teacher violated the district's political action guidelines. While some current and former students are expressing support for the teacher on social media, district officials say they've also received reports from students that the teacher in question believes students will move to the left as a result of his class. That is unacceptable, the statement says. To those who have felt uncomfortable at any time in the past 3 years, we apologize.
We want you out now. Not paid leave and not in a week or two. Now.
And the teacher in question did not respond to ABC 10's request for comment. We have a link to the full statement from the district superintendent. You can find that at abc10.com/links.
Okay, guys. So what is your thought about what you just saw as it relates to this teacher? So Ken, and just to let you know, everybody has about 2 minutes to provide comments on what they just saw. So Ken, I'll start with you. I'm sorry, Ken, we can't hear you. Give me 1 second. Okay, go ahead.
I say this is sad. We live in a woke society. If we don't watch ourselves, we're veering very, very close to offending someone's constitutional First Amendment right. I don't really try to do politics, but at this point in America, you can't say they banned in the bluest eye. The teacher, he felt the way he felt. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Did that teacher give out a waiver to the students to take home? I mean, it's a whole lot of other things. The media only report the bleed and the lead sensationalism. We have to just step back and look at it from an administrative point of view. What I think about that, I don't agree with his philosophy, but I have to respect it, because once you start muting people and silencing people, you can't get the truth out. That's all I'm going to say on that.
All right, Dr. Chastity.
I agree with you, Ken. I'm sorry. Is it Ken? Ken?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. Dr. Mack. I agree with you, but I want to push back a little bit, right? And so I would have loved to have details about what class this was that this teacher was teaching, and a little bit more insight into the lesson plans and exactly what he was saying, because it's my understanding from that video where he was reported, it was not in the classroom, right? He was talking to whomever this person was that he felt comfortable talking to in a place outside of the classroom. So he could have just been given whatever his personal beliefs is, right? But even with that, how was he presented it in the classroom?
He teaches, to answer your question, he teaches AP history.
Okay.
And he had the flag hanging up in his room, and he did communicate the Antifa laws and beliefs to the students. That's why the parents were outraged.
Okay.
So he did, yeah, he did do that. So yeah, it was a little testy there. So Shannon, what's your thoughts?
So I've got thoughts on things that you haven't asked me about yet. I'm going to volunteer those, and then I'll circle back around. So schools, school boards, and school districts have and are becoming kind of the last political battleground, and you are starting to see points of view. And Doc said something earlier about pushing your political ideologies one way or another, and just really understanding kind of the whole scope. Now, let me say this. Whether you agree with him or not, or what was done or not, it's clear that certain school districts have certain political leanings that they follow, and regardless of the organization that the teacher is representing. So ultimately, I would need to know a little bit more and a lot more about past board decisions in order to make an informed decision. Because ultimately, when you hear Antifa, because again, I'm going to say this: Antifa was called out as instigators and looters and rioters during that Black Lives Matter movement, and so there was this conflation between kind of their agenda and this other agenda, and there's this whole piece, and whether you agree with it or not, I think you need to really be aware of the politics of your school board and your community, and kind of where they are. That's really where I am and what I'm thinking. And
okay. No, that's fair enough. What you're saying is definitely fair. So what I'm going to say to you guys is that I do believe that teachers should have an opportunity for freedom of speech, but then there's a line that you cross when you are promoting something that's against school. I would say against school policy. And so the gray area is that he could be indirectly inciting a race riot, and giving the undertones of that. That's my only concern. But I agree 100%. I think of it from this perspective. Even though I'm an African American and I may be teaching in a predominantly white school district, and let's say I believe in the NAACP and Black Lives Matter, does that mean it is not okay for me to put up a flag that says Black Lives Matter or wear a t-shirt that says Black Lives Matter? So that's why I think a lot of times we're crossing the line when it comes to freedom of speech. But if he is intentionally teaching them to hate or to cause riot against another race that directly caused a fight or an argument, then that's a discussion. But if he's just hanging a flag and he has his own personal thoughts, it's not really much that I need to say to that person other than that. So that's my feedback on that.
Another thing, if I can just chime in, co-host Smith, and all respect the time. Think about right now, the Supreme Court, I don't know if that's next week or this week, the coach got fired for having a prayer after the game. Think about how sick that is. I mean, that's going on. They made the decision yesterday. They won't be releasing it until July. I can remember at a graduation, I said, "Good night, God bless you." ACLU suitors, we settled for $5,000 just to get the case. That's before Dr. Townsend was there. But my point was this here. In New York, I was at Astoria Station where all the Moroccans and the Muslims. Last week was Ramadan. Some of the Italians were upset because school was out for a whole week to give the people. I mean, once we start, not understanding why this country was built for freedom of religion, freedom of speech, once we start infringing on that, we're going down a slippery slope. And, it's It's like Baskin Robbins, not saying I want to propagate any one particular religion or political Antifa or whatever the case may be. I mean, the one parent say, get him out right now. Without, I mean, being a principal, I used to react. Now, you got a little older, I don't make any decisions for 72 hours like the court. The court does not charge anybody for 72 hours. So we just can't just say what it is without looking at all the facts.
Agreed. There's a lot more facts on the table. So, guys, we're going to take a look at our next rip from the headlines.
After several reports of guns inside a St. Paul high school, some families say enough is enough.
And they're demanding enhanced security now for the safety of students at Harding High School. Our Paul Bloom is in our newsroom tonight. And Paul, charges filed today in what's really kind of a scary episode inside that school just a couple of days ago.
Tim and Karen, we are talking about allegations of a loaded and chambered handgun inside Harding Senior High School. Apparently, the young man here talking about a 16-year-old with his hand on the trigger while inside the office of an administrator as the school goes on lockdown. Clearly, there are some frayed nerves in that school community right now.
Clearly, they're getting in there. And whatever's happening, the message isn't being sent that guns aren't acceptable at Harding. And we need to make sure that happens.
Not only is Barry Hand frustrated here, frankly, he has some serious concerns about what's going on inside Harding Senior High School right now and the safety of his daughter there. The district and St. Paul police confirm several gun-related incidents inside the building over the last few months, including a frightening episode just this week.
Now when it comes to guns, you know, the funny thing is a fight, an argument, broken property can all be repaired. Once somebody pulls the trigger and a round leaves the chamber, you can't put that back in a gun.
According to court documents, the Ramsey County Attorney's Office has filed felony juvenile charges against a 16-year-old student who brought a loaded handgun into Harding on Wednesday. The petition states that the agitated teen had to be subdued in the assistant principal's office while the school went into lockdown. At one point, he allegedly had his finger on the trigger with the Glock in his sweatshirt pocket. Fortunately, staff was able to restrain him until police arrived. No one hurt. And that incident comes on the heels of another disturbing report of an armed altercation in a Harding High bathroom. A witness capturing the encounter on their cell phone and sharing the video on social media that quickly spread across the Harding community. While Fox 9 has not independently confirmed this is the exact video, and a former teacher in the building insists it is. He argues that it is now time the district think long and hard about implementing some type of metal detector security for campus.
Is that the kind of school we want our kids to be in?
A little bit more about that bathroom encounter with the cell phone video. That was first reported April 1st. Now, police tell us it appeared to be between a 16-year-old suspect trying to get access to a 15-year-old victim's cell phone. Gun at one point pointed at the youngster's head, as you saw. It's not clear whether or not charges were filed in that one, but in this week's gun incident, that young man now facing several counts, including possessing a dangerous weapon on school grounds. We're in the newsroom tonight. Paul Bloom, Fox 9.
Just disturbing, Paul. Thanks.
Okay, guys, what's your thoughts? Okay, Ken, you're muted. Give me 1 second. Okay, Ken, what's your thoughts?
I say I'll go last. I'm going to listen to everybody else.
Okay. Okay, so Dr. Chassie, what's your thoughts?
I'm a little triggered by that last video, right? Who was recording somebody getting a gun pulled out on, right? Like, I'm triggered by that, right? You're actually sitting there recording someone getting a gun put to their head. You're not trying to run for help or anything. So that is very triggering. So I'm assuming they do not have any type of metal detectors or wands or anything for these scholars in this school district.
No.
At this particular high school.
No.
And so is the parents want these metal detectors or they do not want these metal detectors? Do we know this?
No, the parents, they don't want that. They're saying that something has to be done as it relates to better communication with between the parents and the students as it relates to guns. But the major concern is that a student was able to bring a gun into school. He had his hand on the trigger as he was speaking to a school administrator, and then they had to kind of subdue him to get him down to the ground. And I'm just going to say I'm a little bit alarmed that the student got that far and he was able to have his hand on the trigger in his pocket facing an administrator in a threatening or non-threatening way. I don't know, but that's pretty much what happened. So Shannon, what's your perspective on this?
Let me start by just laying out this disclaimer. Guns in schools are bad. Okay. No one thinks that that's a good idea. Mm-hmm. It's all bad. And children with guns are not a good idea generally as well. Having said that, kids don't bring guns to school for no reason. And I think ultimately asking the question, because metal detectors don't solve the problem. As a former high school principal, you ditch the gun on the side of the building, walk through the metal detector, your homeboy walks out, passes you the gun, and you still got a school full of guns. They just didn't come in the front door. Now, that having been said, the real, because schools in general are places where whatever happens in the community comes into the school. Mm-hmm. So there has to be some real communication with these children and with these families around how to resolve conflict, how to appropriately address issues with one another. And then you got to do some real community building. I mean, because guns have to be thought of as something that I can't bring into the school because it's not the right thing to do. Not I can't bring it to the school because they got a metal detector. There has to be a moral kind of a draw that really gets the young person to not bring a gun. Like that just can be something that I can't do. Now, that having been said, Dr. Chastity, that whole bathroom, cell phone, that's just really not that uncommon, to be completely honest with you. It's not. And there's a lot worse than that occurs, sadly, in high school bathrooms. But so short answer, community building, really asking the whys, because metal detectors don't prevent guns from entering buildings. That's the wrong conversation. This is really about what's going on with these kids in the neighborhood that they feel as though, right, that this is the only option they have, because no one who's making good, sane decisions is bringing a gun to school, because you really have to be fearing or some other, So I think that ultimately, but those folks who are in that office with that kid with his finger on the trigger are they're fortunate to not be in a much worse off situation.
Hey, I agree with both of you guys. Think about Oxford. The guy, mother purchased him the gun. Think about that. The guy in Oxford, you're speaking from my personal experience. I've taken over 200 guns. I can remember we was over at Crockett going down with those Kettering boys picking on our kids. But at Persia, we had an old guy. His name was Mr. Shabazz. Out of the 200 guns that I probably confiscated, 180 somebody snitched, as Dr. Smith said. Somebody in the school must have relationships, because you go to any big school, any urban school. Last school I was at, we had 68 doors. We only had a metal detector at one door. So who is to say open up this door? And then in Detroit, if you're a principal, I take it right now, Dr. DeVoe. Anybody can say, hey, homeboy, open up the back door. I'm coming through here. You can't stop guns. Guns, it's a mindset. I grew up with my grandfather having shotguns in the house all of our life. We never dreamed of taking a gun because we respected guns. You go to Arizona, Texas, Florida, where you don't even need a permit, or North Dakota. You go to North Dakota right now. People got shotguns inside their trucks. So, you know, these people are like, oh, we don't want metal detectors. Guns are part of American life. When you look at the Second Amendment, why do you think these Republicans and people fighting for their guns? And it's nothing. If I got a beef with somebody to take a gun, I mean, everybody got a gun. Gil Scott Heron, I don't know if you ever heard of him. Everybody got a pistol. Everybody got a 45. They should not be in school. But the reality is, when I was at certain schools, I knew every day in the back of my mind, if you was at an urban school, that I could be dead any day. I had that was the price I paid. I've seen students play Russian roulette with themselves in the bathroom. You're talking about what goes on in the bathroom. I'm not saying all schools, But the schools, I worked at those schools that was kind of challenging. And it really starts back at home. I just truly believe. I've been around guns all my life. I've never dreamed of taking a gun to school. But, I mean, we want to put our head in the sand and act like things don't exist. That's all I want to say.
So let me say this to you guys. Do you think that this, and I don't know if you missed this in the news report, where they kind of did a flash where the guy said, we don't want our school to be like this with metal detectors. It was a flash of obviously a school in an urban or minority area. So do you think this got a lot of headway because it was at a suburban school, that they're thinking all of a sudden guns are making its way here? I mean, from my perspective, they're the ones attending the gun shows and getting them legally. So I'm not shocked or surprised that this is in our schools. I'm just keeping it real. But I'm a little bit surprised at how it's gotten this much attention in news media because it is a suburban school.
There you go. I mean, in Detroit, 90% of the guns that comes into school, when they trace them, was from one of these young fools did a B&E. It happened in the suburban district, and the suburban people have this fallacy like Oxford. Wow, how did that happen? Because, I mean, I don't know the answer, but I do know when I listen to people say, we don't want metal detectors, they don't realize that this is everywhere. In our neighborhood, if they have a cold, we got pneumonia. So if it's there, could you imagine what's been going on in these urban schools in Brooklyn, in Detroit, and Baltimore for years? This is not even really a news story in Detroit. I bet you today, or New York, I don't know, they probably got 5 guns and they make the news.
It's not even newsworthy. Okay, guys, we'll be right back after these commercials. We'll be back. We'll move on to our next rip from the headlines. Okay, welcome back. We're going to go into our next, which I'm going to tell you, this one I think is a little bit interesting. Let's get started. Give me 1 second. All right, there we go. Interesting. Give me 1 second. We seem to be having a technical difficulty over here. Give me 1 minute. Okay. Stop. All right, here we go. Sorry about that.
Year-old Ayanna Davis, a substitute teacher at Lakeland High School, is now out of a job facing serious charges. She's accused of having sex with one of her male students, who deputies say is 16 years old or younger.
You're a teacher. You're supposed to teach. You're not supposed to be getting involved with these students like that.
The investigation began back on December 3rd when a student told a school resource officer about a video on Snapchat showing Davis and another student having sex. According to the affidavit, the male victim sent the video to a large number of Lakeland High School football players. When investigators interviewed Davis, she admitted she and the male student had sex at least 4 times, twice at her home and twice at the student's home, while his parents were asleep upstairs.
Like, girl, what is wrong with you? Did you burn through your last 5 brain cells? So she's locked up in the county jail, and I anticipate that's where she'll spend Christmas, eating turkey off of a loaf.
When investigators confronted the victim, he initially denied ever having sex with Davis before admitting the two had sex 4 times. In interviews, he says he initiated the relationship when he randomly walked up to her one day. He tells police at first the two just liked each other, but says the relationship turned sexual on October 10th after a football game. As of right now, police are still working to track down a copy of this Snapchat video.
We certainly would like for someone to turn it over to us. We know there are copies out there, but they deny it. However, we've talked to multiple witnesses that saw it. So we believe our witnesses.
In a statement, Polk County School Superintendent Frederick Hyde says in part, quote, "We expect substitute teachers to uphold the same high standards of conduct and professionalism as our full-time educators," going on to say the charges against this person are disgraceful and a complete violation of the trust that teachers build with their students.
Okay, guys, what's your thoughts on that?
Crazy. I mean, that sister need help. But if it would have been a male teacher, I mean, it's just I don't know. I mean, with something like that, she has a breakdown in her morals. She has some psychological damage. Hurt people. She was probably abused. She's a predator. I mean, ain't no other way of saying it.
Okay, Dr. Chastity.
I completely agree with everything you said. Like there's no reason why, right? Even if he approached her, there's still that power dynamic. You are the teacher. You are the grown-up. She's an attractive lady. I'm sure she could find someone her age, right? So there's something missing there. There's something wrong where she is having sex with her students.
Okay, Shannon.
One thing that stuck out for me was the fact that she was a substitute teacher. And I asked myself this question. I said, how many times have I seen a story like this and the top of the headline is substitute teacher? And then I asked myself, why are people not flocking to education? Why is this not a profession that folks are choosing in droves? It's noble. The results can really be amazing and fantastic for families. And the work, and Doc said it a minute ago, is hard. This is arduous, unsupported work, and largely the people that do it are not respected or appreciated across the board, not by the communities or by the districts that they're there to serve. And we saw a lot of that during the onset of the pandemic. So I'm just asking myself, what can we do as a profession to make this work attractive and real and make it really a viable profession for the folks that choose to do it, and really make it attractive work? Because and you know, again, I agree with everything that everyone has said, but ultimately, why do we have to see so many stories that have a substitute at the top of it? Why aren't we creating the conditions that really provide for full-time, qualified, sane faculty members to be in front of our students at all times?
Shannon, I can only say I ditto what, and the reason I'm dittoing what you're saying, I'm going to add to it is this. I want people to be clear that that's a substitute teacher and not a certified teacher. The other thing is I want us to be clear on is that she was 20 years old. And so when you think about bringing these people in front of these students, and these are high school students, she was 4 years older than the 16-year-old that she had sex with. And I don't know the mindset of a 20-year-old who thinks like that. I'm going to tell you, at 20, I was in college, and I definitely was not thinking about fondling a 16-year-old. But I'm going to say this: we need to do more thorough background checks and not be so quick to leave a substitute in a classroom unmonitored with students. This is a new person off the street. And that deeply concerns me because we're supposed to be doing background checks. And unfortunately, with all the research that my team has done to put together these videos and find them, we have found that people have gotten fired in one district for sexual harassment, being a child predator, and get hired in another school district, not even but 2 seconds away. And so that deeply concerns me, that how are we tracking these people who are just running around as substitutes? And teachers are outraged because a lot of times they forget to put the word substitute. They just say teacher at this school, and it's not a teacher, it's a substitute teacher. And so teachers, to your point, Shannon, become very angry because they've gone to college 4 years, and some of them done additional work to get this certification, to get their degrees. And it's like, you're making a mockery of my profession. I mean, it's the equivalent of somebody going to GM and all of a sudden you can be what, a substitute accountant? You can be a substitute executive? No. So there's got to be some sort of standard or requirement or regulations that we're starting to look at before we start putting people in front of our kids. And I'm going to say that again, because so many laws, like the state of Michigan, will now let a bus driver teach our kids. Literally. I'm very concerned. We now have a law that says that. So folks, the reason why we're doing Rip from the Headlines is, one, we want you to be shocked. We want you to be angry, but we also want you to do something about it. If you're an educated person and you're retired and you're tired of seeing people stand in front of your kids that are like this, get in there and give them 2 or 3 hours of your life. Just give them 2 or 3 hours.
You know what? I don't know that I can agree with that, Burkett, because my mother is a retired educator, and I can honestly say I wouldn't want my mom in any schools right now.
But Shannon, let me ask you, and this is true, real talk. You're right, because of different things that's happening. But I would rather have an educated person in front of my kid instead of this 20-year-old sub who probably had no experience.
How about we rethink what this looks like?
Like rethink.
How about we?
So are you saying that you wouldn't want your mom, or you wouldn't want any retired person to come back? Not retired teacher. I'm saying any professional, educated professional. Remember, I wasn't a teacher. I was a chemist who came into education a back door. So you got to understand, there's a lot of us out there too.
This work demands an abundance of energy. This work demands high levels of engagement. And I think that what districts and organizations have to do is rethink how we deliver services to students and to communities with what we have, because administrators are caught between a rock and a hard place. They largely just don't have bodies, right? They don't have the folks to put in front of kids, and that's where you start to see slippage in the standards. But ultimately, I'm
sorry. I'd rather have somebody who's retired executive come and teach my kids than Bobo the Clown. I just want to be clear. We're going to have to disagree on this. And I'm telling you right now, I get outraged because the minute our governor put in a law that a bus driver can teach my kid, I'm outraged.
But that's a statement about the value of teaching. And it goes
that's my whole point. That never should have occurred. She should have never been in front of kids.
Dr. Chastity is waiting. She's waiting.
So I think it goes back to the district, the school, and the policy and the recruiting with the substitute teachers. Because I served as a substitute teacher last year in a pandemic. Somebody called me like, look, I am desperate. I need somebody. I know that you have a passion and a gift for teaching. I know that you are a adjunct faculty member in higher education. Okay, what do you need me to teach? But even with that person's blessing, I still had to go through background checks. I still had to get a certification, right? And so they had to go through. I had to send my transcripts. I had to send my resume. I had to send this. I had to show that, hey, I have taught. You understand what I'm saying? So it wasn't just like just picking me up across the street. I had to interview, right? Not
so
only
you're wondering how she got through the loophole.
Basically.
Because like Shannon said, they're desperate. Every state is desperate. Go ahead, Ken.
Shannon, you know, being a principal, I can remember coming in, and first the unions, you only work 180 days a year.
Yep.
You get 5 professional development days, 3 snow days. I've had teachers miss 35 days. The union protects them in Michigan, but in regards to having the bus driver and a kid 18, it's not even money. I guess it is money.
It is money, Ken. They're paying them $100 and some dollars a day.
But guess what? You can take any guy right now and let him go work at Blaze Pizza. He getting $20 a day. I mean, really, until we make this like Scandinavia. The reason why America is a joke, and I've been blessed to check out different cultures, different countries. We don't pay a livable wage, primarily, I have to say it, because 80% of teachers are women, and this system with Horace Mann's, it was really First, men took it over. After the war, they brought women in. The wages have never. It's a noble profession. Your mother was an educator. I love it, but you can make more money cutting the tree down in 1 hour than you can all week being a teacher.
And
So
that's
really,
the point I'm making, Ken. That's my whole point right there.
But see,
we got to raise the expectations. There's no way a sub should be getting $120 a day. Their time is worth. My kid is worth more than $120 a day.
Well,
I mean, just because think about it. When I was assistant superintendent, I managed the budget. I know what per pupil allocation was. Why are you belittling the time that it took for a teacher to become a teacher and get licensed in that state to teach to like $120 a day? Do you think some sub is going to show up and do equivalent to that? No.
What state was that? What state was that?
What do you mean? What state was that? Michigan.
No, with the young lady in
Florida.
Yeah.
Florida, and now Florida don't pay anything. Florida,
Okay.
a principal at Florida. I remember I was gonna get a job at Florida. A principal at Florida public school was making $70,000 when they was making $100,000. And so I can only imagine they probably paying that poor girl $80 a day.
And that's sad. And we all at a shortage. Guys, we'll be right back after these commercials to see our next rip from the headlines.
I gotta make a move. I told you I would, but listen, I love you guys. Keep doing this work, and I'm gonna chime in later on. But Shannon, we'll get together. She'll give you my number.
For sure. Looking forward to it.
Okay, guys, and we're back. We're going to go into our next rip from the headlines. This one is pretty interesting, pretty engaging, I think.
Christine, witnesses say the middle schoolers attacked that coach all because he tried to discipline them. And today, the chaotic aftermath of what happened here yesterday continues. A chase and beatdown on the Lane Creek High School campus caught on cell phone video yesterday. Cyfair ISD officials say that the attackers are 4 students from Aragon Middle School. Students here at the high school say that the victim is a baseball coach who told the middle school kids that they could not ride dirt bikes on campus.
Later that day, they got arrested, and their older friends threatened to shoot up our school.
Cyfair ISD officials say a threat made through social media resulted in beefed up security and safety measures on campus today.
We couldn't walk around unless we had an ID badge. They wouldn't even let us in. I have athletics experience, so I don't have it on, and my teacher wouldn't let me in unless I put it on.
Students say that the coach was not at school today. Cyfair ISD officials sent a letter to parents saying that the juveniles who attacked him were taken into custody and will be disciplined according to the code of conduct. Concerned parents,
this just shouldn't be happening, not in our own backyard.
Want swift action.
That just cannot happen. These kids definitely need to get in a whole lot of trouble, and I'm just speechless.
Tonight it's unclear what criminal charges, if any, those juveniles face. The Cypher ISD police investigation continues. Reporting live in the Cypress area tonight, Devin Clark, KPRC 2 News.
Hey guys, what do you think?
Can I play? I don't want to say. Well, I'll say enemy advocate, right? I don't want to say the other enemy advocate for a while. Like, is this the first? And do they know if this is the first interaction with this coach that these teens had
They didn't say that. They just said this particular coach just simply asked them not to do something on the baseball field, which was to ride their bikes or something on the baseball field, and the kids got upset about it.
They didn't
They didn't say if this was an ongoing incident or he had been teased or taunted before. No.
Okay. And did they?
But let me ask you a question. Would that matter if he was to you?
I just find it odd that, and this can be me and my Pollyanna, right? I just find it odd that if someone is riding, hey, you can't ride on here. Like, what did he say to them? Did he call them out of their names, or like for an adult to say, please don't ride your bikes on this baseball field, and then all of a sudden they jumped off their bikes and they started chasing him? So that's why I was curious, like, was it other interactions, or was it some other words or things, like what was said that made them that angry?
I can only tell you we only have what they have put out. We don't have any, we're not calling the school districts and asking, was there like a repeat offender? Was this teacher like reprimanded in the past for saying, inappropriate things to the students? We don't know. But I'm still going to ask the question, would that matter? If he was all those things, would it matter?
No, I don't know. It would not matter, but I've just for me, like I said, in all my Pollyanna, I'm just like, these kids just jumped off these bikes and started chasing this man. It doesn't make sense.
Okay,
so it doesn't make
Shannon,
sense.
what's your thoughts?
Want to start by saying it's wrong for anyone to assault anyone else, students, adults. No one wants that. That's all bad. As I watched the video, I looked at who was doing the chasing, and I looked at who was being chased. And I said, okay, you have what appeared to me, and I could be wrong, 4 young men of color chasing what might have been a Caucasian man. I mean, am I accurate in the way that I saw what I think I saw?
Yes.
The first question, and because these are middle schoolers and they're on bicycles, I'm asking myself this question because, and it's not out of line with what Dr. Chastity is saying. What did he say to them? They were wrong. All bad, right? But I've also had interaction with coaches. Not stereotyping the way that coaches communicate with young boys, but sometimes the communication can be a bit off-putting, to put it mildly. So, no, all bad, wrong. I would love to know more. I know that we're not calling this school district to get a sense of what's what, but I mean, it's problematic regardless. And the sad thing about it is those young boys will have their lives forever changed by this event. As the coach, I'm always a lot more concerned about these kids because they've got their future ahead of them, but they're going to forever be impacted by this poor choice that they made. But I do ask myself, like Dr. Chastity, okay, what was that interaction?
So the reason why I asked, does that matter, is because I always ask the question, because of what someone says, does it require you to act in a way? And I can only use Will Smith, that you just get up and you just respond without thinking. And that's where my concern is. Regardless of what that coach said, you have 4 middle school kids chasing down a teacher. And let's just say they did catch up with him. And let's just say they did beat the crap out of him. And that man ended up dying. Whatever he said, was it worth all of what's going to happen to you right now?
So you're answering that question from an adult's perspective.
No. I get what you're saying, Shannon, but I'm just saying big picture. I say this because
it's all bad.
No, because our kids watch social media and all of this stuff. Like the kid who was actually recording it is running with them, and I'm thinking to myself, at no point in time you didn't think to call 911. You're like you're filming a movie. This is reality. It's not a movie. Have we become so desensitized to someone could get really hurt, killed, or anything that he's filming it like it's a movie?
I will say this.
And if someone's filming him, film it. That's the other thing.
The value in that is that moment, good, bad, or other, is memorialized. And you have an accurate account of what occurred. And that's the value in that.
Well, an accurate account from one side. Like you said, we don't know what happened before the change.
You don't know what happened before, you don't know what happened after. Agreed.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It just that accounting of it just looks bad for the students.
And do we not know that he put his hands on one of them?
That's what I'm saying.
Or maybe he pushed one of them or something.
They were wrong for chasing that team. That coach shouldn't have happened.
And that's one of the things I think, by the way, people rewatch all of our shows. And I just want the people who are watching, if you're going to share this with your students, I want you to understand the students, you have to have more control over your feelings and emotions. And because of social media, we just do whatever. And we think there's no recourse for our actions. And this is even adults. I mean, I'm finding that adults are doing things in spaces like, someone's capturing this, right? And what is happening. But that's what my concern is that these kids' lives, like you said, Shannon, are forever changed because of their actions. And to your point, and Dr. Chad's point, he could have said something. He could have been a horrible coach who just was very demeaning to the students. But students, was it worth this? Whatever the outcome is going to be. And trust me, I'm going to look for the outcome. We try to look for the outcome of things because we want to know what happened. But I'm going to tell you, this right here just blew my mind that some middle school kids, and from a teacher's perspective too, now you're like, is it safe to teach in middle school? Because kids will come after you like a mob. So again, it's still kind of, you want people to come into education, but to be honest with you, Shannon, people don't see the amazing things. They see this. All the amazing, great things that teachers are doing in classroom. And trust me, when I say to you, we were doing research, it was hard to find the great and amazing.
Yeah, turn on any news channel right now, there's something horrific being broadcast.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so I think that in general, people don't see the amazing things anywhere. That's not what we're fed.
Right.
In the news cycle. So maybe a good idea would be for someone to come up with a 24-hour good news network. That's a whole different conversation for another time.
I like that idea, the 24-hour good news network. I would like to see that because I would definitely like to see some good news. Well, on that note, I'm going to tell you that our last one tonight is about good news. It's about excellence in the classroom. And I'm really excited. I really like to see what's happening in this space. And we're going to look for more of these.
And when they turned that song on, I knew the assignment. I knew that song. So I dropped everything and I just danced with them. And the kids were surprised that I really just went all out, that's for sure. But they definitely decided to go all out with me, and the video turned out just to be even greater than I could have imagined. Our biggest focus this year has really just been social emotional and just making sure our kids are feeling good and feeling happy, wanting to be back in the school building. So this teacher actually was putting on that song. Any educator that had walked in the room, they were putting it on to see what would happen. The kids were kind of seeing who knew what to do. And especially after everything we've been through, it's definitely a number one priority, health and safety, but also just joy.
OMG, I want to tell you that made me so happy.
Yes.
When I found that, because to me, for a teacher to put in a break, and as soon as kids hear a song, like they go into mad dancing and just taking a break from classwork, that to me was a teacher recognizing there's a lot that's happening. Our kids deserve a small break. But the thing is, the whole school isn't on it. They know whenever they hear this song, if you happen to be in a classroom, you're supposed to go into dance with the kids. So what do you guys think about that? Was that like Rockstar?
I love it. I love it. I think that's how you engage. You build trust, right? You meet your scholars where they are and just have fun. And it lighten the load, right? I'm not sure what assignment they were working on, but it's heavy all over the place, right? And just I want them to do that in my job.
But I think they got 2 for 1 because it gives the teacher a break too. They get to kind of like have a moment themselves and just kind of break away. Shannon, what do you think about that?
It reminds me of a quote, and maybe it's Maya Angelou. I may not always remember kind of what you taught, but I always remember how you made me feel. And ultimately, when teachers, administrators intentionally create moments of joy, thoughtfully engaging and connecting with students and seeing their humanity and being seen as humans. It's those are the spaces that those students, teachers, and that assistant principal will never forget. And that's the power and value of teaching. And we're not even talking about a lesson or standards. We're just talking about human connection, which is something that a lot of people haven't had for quite some time. So I think it's incredibly positive. And I was like, yeah, they're doing it. And this is what that looks like in that moment. And what'll happen is that teacher, those students, that administrator, they will all do better work together.
I like that. And I'm going to take, if more school districts took opportunities like that to engage with their students, to engage with their teachers, like a teacher thought of this on her own, and then the other teachers start doing it. And it was like a big thing that when you're in anybody's classroom and the music comes on, you know what to do. So they've created a culture, to your point, that is, we always remember one core thing. All of us are human. We all need a break from what it is that we're doing. And they just use that as an opportunity. And like you said, now they're all together. They're going to work harder to achieve their goals. And the kids are going to love the fact that they understood, I'm in this space with you. And this is all of us doing together. They brought it down to the kids level. I mean, and I liked that she was doing the running man. I just want to say that she was doing that running man, and I was feeling her, because I'm just saying a lot of folks would have been like, doing a little bit of this. She got all in. She went hard on it. So I was like, I respect that. But that was awesome. If there's one thing that you guys want to leave with educators who watch this podcast later, Dr. Tassie, I'm going to start with you. What would you like to leave them with?
You were called to do this work. Don't forget that. And you got this.
I like that. You were called to do this work and you got this. I like this. Shannon, what would you say to the educators out there?
We have to think about doing this work differently. And we've been taught to do it the way that it's always been done. And there are ways of approaching the work that are really effective for the population that we work with today. And I think we should experiment more. We should take more risks and really think outside the box, because the magic truly does happen in the classroom. And teaching is one of the most challenging yet rewarding professions on the planet. And so today, you've got some absolutely fantastic tools that you can leverage. Like, you can really do some cool stuff in schools that you couldn't do 20 years ago. Let's do it differently. Take the desks out of rows,
Let's start with that, right? So I'm going to say I agree with what both of you are saying, and I'm going to be totally honest with you. If there's one thing that I know I would do for free, and that would be a teacher. I think being a teacher is the most powerful job that anyone could have. It's the most important job besides being a parent. And I think when you look at the lives that you can impact and the worlds that you can change, it's because of teachers today that we have every job that's out there right now that people are doing, from entrepreneurs to engineers to the latest and greatest doctors and inventors. Trust and believe, everything that you do matters. And although you're not highlighted for the amazing work that you do, I'm going to say, feel free to use this platform as an opportunity to showcase your great things. We would love to have your videos. We would love to have you to join our podcast and be a part of the conversation. We want to show people being a teacher is valuable. Folks, if you're looking for a job that's going to transform lives, I mean, hundreds and thousands of lives, is teaching. Don't look at it for the money. That's not what's happening. Your reward is going to come when you see your students and the progress that they're going to do in order to change the world that we live in. All of us had to go to school somewhere, and it all started with teachers. So on that note, I'm going to say thank you so much for watching the Educators Roundtable, and we will see you guys next week, because next week I'm going to tell you there's this amazing teacher, and she's going to be in our Hour of Excellence because she is outstanding at what she's doing in the schools in Baltimore. So we'll see you guys next week, and thanks again for joining us here at Educators Roundtable.